There's no way we can let that idiot Chavez Jr. fight Jake Paul because Jake will beat him, okay? The gorilla punches will beat Chavez Jr.
Time ago. I remember standing on a beach in Mauritius. I had the Julio Cesar Chavez fight. It was done.
Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. A fight that's been called entertaining, exciting, and now pathetic. Joe Rogan's brutal criticism echoes what many in the fight game are starting to feel. What once seemed like a flashy celebrity sideshow has started rubbing the sport's purists the wrong way. With legends like Tim Bradley, Paulie Malignaggi, and promoters like Eddie Hearn and Oscar de la Hoya chiming in, the entire boxing world seems split between spectacle and sport. So let's break down the reactions and reality behind this bizarre matchup that has fans shaking their heads. Tim Bradley doesn't hold back when he describes Jake Paul's intentions. He sarcastically calls Jake serious, but only serious about getting for a check. To Bradley, Jake isn't chasing greatness, he's chasing clout. Mentioning Canelo and Anthony Joshua is, in Bradley's eyes, delusional and laughable. He paints Jake as someone trying to sneak into the conversation of legitimate fighters without earning that spot. This quote sets the tone. Respected veterans of the sport don't take Jake seriously, and they view his matchmaking tactics as shameless clout chasing rather than pursuit of boxing glory.
I think he's serious. I think he's serious to get his ass whooped for some money. That's what it is. He's serious enough to, hey, he don't mind getting his ass whooped because ultimately it's about like being in the ring with him, right? That's the main thing. He want to be able to say, look what I've done in the last 4 years, 5 years, or 5 years in boxing. I got to the top. I fought the best fighter in the world, pound for pound, Canelo Alvarez or Anthony Joshua, heavyweight champ. That's just it. That's all he wants. He looking for clout, man. That's it. Clout at the end of the day. He know he can't beat none of those dudes.
Bradley doubles down, encouraging top-tier pros like Joshua, Canelo, and Andre Ward to simply beat Jake Paul and get over with. He jokes about not even barking up that tree himself, mocking the idea of Jake being in the same realm. This isn't just shade, it's a slap to the idea that Jake belongs in the same breath as world champions. Bradley speaks with the voice of old school boxing, where respect is earned in blood, not YouTube clicks. For him, Jake's rise feels like a marketing stunt that mocks the sanctity of the sport.
Concerned for you in that fight?
I wouldn't be concerned. I'll just say, hey, Joshua, handle your business. Fight that, man. Do that. You know what? For a long time, I was thinking to myself, I was saying, like, nah, guys, don't fool around with Jake Paul. Don't fool around with Jake Paul. Hell no. Hell no. Fight him, beat him, smoke him. Andre Ward, get in there with him, beat him. Knock his ass out. Anthony Joshua, get in there, beat him, knock his ass out. Who else? Canelo Alvarez, get in there, fight him, knock his ass out.
You?
Who, me? Bro, I ain't even gonna bar.
Eddie Hearn reflects on Chavez Jr. as a fighter who once had the spotlight, but fell off due to inconsistency and questionable commitment. Hearn's story about nearly booking a big money fight in Vegas, only for Chavez Jr. to cancel over sore elbows, says everything about his reliability. For Jake Paul, Chavez Jr. becomes a perfect name famous enough to draw eyes, flawed enough to beat. But to hardcore boxing fans, this reeks of opportunism. If Jake beats Chavez Jr., it won't prove he belongs at the elite level, it'll prove he knows how to pick the right name at the right time.
Time ago. I remember standing on a beach in Mauritius. I had the Julio Cesar Chavez fight. It was done. Al Heyman phoned me up. They made me a very good offer for the fight. Carl Froch had always wanted to fight in Las Vegas. We had Julio Cesar Chavez in Vegas for a load of money. And Carl just turned around and he went, do you know my elbow's a bit sore? I was like, what the fuck? And that was it, he never fought again. That was about 10 years ago, maybe, something like that. Chavez has had a few twists and turns since then. Yeah, so it's a good opponent pick for Jake Paul.
Jake Paul claims he wants tougher opponents and real belts, not entertainment props. But the irony is glaring Chavez Jr. is hardly considered a tough challenge anymore. Calling him easy work is both cocky and strategic. Jake wants to shut people up by facing a real boxer, but picks one with baggage and vulnerabilities. His quote reads like a guy trying to have it both ways, claiming to be serious while navigating the easiest path to legitimacy. This is what fuels Joe Rogan's disdain because the talk of belts and toughness doesn't match the reality of his matchmaking.
I want someone tougher, and I want a real belt, not just like something that gets put up for entertainment value. So it's great and all, but like honestly, he's easy work, and I want someone tougher.
Jake boldly calls himself the biggest payday in boxing, comparing himself to the hot girl on the block. While it's true he draws attention and sells tickets, this is where the line between athlete and entertainer blurs. Jake sees himself more as a business than a boxer, and that mindset is what offends boxing purists. His priority isn't legacy, it's leverage. This quote highlights the fundamental disconnect. Jake Paul is a disruptor in a sport that traditionally demands dues. And while some praise a hustle, others like Rogan see it as a slap in the face to every fighter who bled to get here.
I mean, there's like a long line of people like that can take a ticket and get in line to see who I want to fight next. Seriously, like, I don't say that as shit talk. I'm the biggest payday in the sport of boxing right now, so everyone wants to fight, and when you're the hot girl on the block, you can do what the fuck you want.
Oscar de la Hoya defends Jake Paul's fight with Chavez Jr. by comparing it to Canelo's past opponent. He suggests that if Jake can even hurt Chavez Jr., it will be something Canelo couldn't do. But this line of thought misses a critical detail. Chavez Jr. is nowhere near the same fighter today. Oscar tries to build excitement by attaching Jake's name to Canelo's legacy, but it feels like a promoter's spin more than a genuine sporting comparison. To purists like Rogan, this kind of marketing is exactly why the matchup feels manufactured, not meaningful.
Canelo Alvarez fought Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. We promoted that fight many years ago. Didn't knock him out, couldn't hurt him. So imagine if Jake Paul can hurt or even wobble Chavez Jr. It's something that Canelo didn't do or couldn't do. So Jake Paul, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., it's a real fight. Look, people keep talking about Jake Paul, well, he's not a real fighter, this and that. Well, he's fighting a real fighter now in Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. It's going to be a good test for both guys. Obviously,
Oscar then praises Jake as a masterclass promoter, recognizing his business acumen. He paints Chavez Jr. as a dangerous opponent when focused, but that's the issue. He rarely is. By acknowledging Chavez Jr.'s inconsistency, Oscar unintentionally confirms why this fight worked for Jake. It's the illusion of risk. On paper, it looks respectable. In reality, it's calculated. This is what makes the fight seem pathetic to critics. It banks on faded names and the hope that fans will buy into the hype instead of digging into the truth.
he's a masterclass promoter in what he does. He's been doing some great things. I mean, Mike Tyson, 60 million people, fighting Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who, when he trains, when he gets in shape, when he's focused.
Oscar continues his promotion, teasing a lot of great stories coming out of the Jake versus Chavez fight. This includes bloodbaths and title eliminators, but it's all smoke and mirrors. The mention of MVP promotions and fantasy matchups is more about future marketing than current competition. There's no mention of legacy, rankings, or meaningful growth, just buzzwords and headlines. It's the circus masquerading as a championship chase. And to someone like Joe Rogan, who respects combat sports at their core, this spectacle is insulting to what boxing should represent.
So there's a lot of stories to come out from this, a lot of great stories for Jake Paul. So I just feel honored and proud that we can team up with MVP Promotions, with Jake Paul, and we can make Zurdo Ramirez with Torticos the mandatory. That's going to be a bloodbath in itself, so we're excited.
Speculation about a possible title being on the line only fuels the fire. While it's unlikely to be a real-world title, the idea that Jake Paul could fight for any belt against Chavez Jr. is laughable to boxing traditionalists. This is where the controversy hits a boiling point. Boxing's complex sanctioning bodies and fragmented belts allow almost anyone with enough buzz to fight for a trinket. But giving that platform to Jake Paul, while many real contenders wait in line, is what makes fans and analysts like Rogan label the entire situation as pathetic and farcical.
The idea of him stepping toward a world championship, it's already been put out there. I'm pretty sure Mendoza has already kind of tweeted out at some point that he wouldn't mind putting Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. in a fight for a championship. Does he mean a world championship? No way, but I have to assume he means like a, international or some sort of lower level belt, which again, when you talk about the politics of boxing and all of the different committees and all of the different commissions and sanctioning bodies, there is something to be said for Jake's popularity, and the WBA, which is Gilbert Mendoza's organization, they want to be in the Jake Paul business. So for what Jake's trying to do, fight for a world title, this is going to put him closer to doing that just by pure name value of him and, again, Julio Cesar Chavez lineage name value of Chavez Sr. But as far as the competition level in this fight, it's a bit of a mixed bag because number one, Jake is fighting a way past his prime Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. I think everybody can admit that. We know that he struggled with drug usage. We know that Jake has already beat the last man to beat Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. in Anderson Silva. And Anderson's, I think, first or second fight as a boxer walked in and pretty much styled on Chavez Jr. in a pretty uneventful fight where both guys didn't land a ton. And the same ghosts that have haunted Chavez Jr. in that fight, in the Canelo fight, his lack of output potentially could haunt him in this fight. And again, the substance abuse potentially is a big reason for.
Paulie Malignaggi steps in with a sobering assessment. He acknowledges Chavez Jr.'s legacy is inflated by his father's name, calling him lazy and overrated. And yet he still thinks Chavez Jr. is the better choice for Jake than Anderson Silva, because at least it brings an element of surprise. That's the problem. Jake isn't taking risks. He's taking calculated steps that let him claim progress without real pressure. To Paulie, the fight isn't competitive, it's convenient. And this only adds a chorus of voices saying Jake Paul's path is carefully curated to fool the masses while avoiding the fire.
Anderson Silva would beat Jake Paul. I don't think that would be a surprise element. You know what I mean? Like, you still need to have a balancing act here where that you're playing. I think Anderson is too good. Like, I don't think there would be a surprise element to that promotion. I think Chavez Jr. is a better name for it. Who Anderson just beat in boxing. Who is tough though. He's lazy as hell. He's probably overrated as hell. If his last name, if he wasn't Chavez Sr.'s his son, he probably would go nowhere near a world title in his life, so boxing can be manipulated.
Paulie Malignaggi adds another layer of criticism, focusing on the unpredictability that Chavez Jr. brings not in a good way, but in terms of discipline. He raises concerns about Chavez Jr. even making weight, emphasizing his history of showing up out of shape or unprepared. For Malignaggi, that's part of what makes this matchup appealing from a promotional standpoint. It offers just enough drama and uncertainty to sell without truly threatening Jake Paul. And that's exactly the problem. The risk isn't real. To Joe Rogan and many others, this further confirms that Jake isn't chasing greatness, he's playing with optics.
You know, he gives you a little bit more to work with, because again, the element of surprise. If is he gonna show up in shape? You're worried about guys not making weight? That guy will show up not making weight. You know what I mean?
In perhaps his most brutally honest quote, Malignaggi states flat out that Jake Paul would beat Chavez Jr., calling Chavez an idiot and mocking his inability to deal with Jake's guerrilla punches. This isn't coming from a Jake Paul fan, it's coming from someone deeply entrenched in the sport, admitting that Chavez Jr. has regressed to a point where losing to a novice like Jake is entirely realistic. That, for many including Rogan, is the very definition of pathetic, not because Jake's evolving, but because boxing has allowed its standards to sink so low that a YouTuber beating a legacy fighter feels expected.
There's no way we can let that idiot Chavez Jr. fight Jake Paul, because Jake will beat him, okay? The gorilla punches will beat Chavez Jr.
Robert Diaz shares a surprising anecdote. Chavez Sr. himself once said his son should fight Jake Paul. That conversation, originally a throwaway idea, has now become reality. Diaz reflects on it like it's a dream come true. But to many boxing purists, it's more like a nightmare. This quote reveals the deep commercial influence now dictating matchmaking. When legends suggest circus fights as business moves, it shows just how far the sport has drifted from its purest roots. It's not about titles anymore, it's about trending. And to someone like Joe Rogan, who values authenticity and merit, that's hard to stomach.
Dead honest opinion. About 2 years ago, I spoke to Chavez Sr., and we were talking, we were in an airport coming back from the WBC convention, and I said, you know what fight your son should do? And he said, what? Jake Paul. So now I'm seeing it develop, and I'm like sitting back, and I'm like, wow.
Diaz further suggests that if Jake Paul manages to stop Chavez Jr., he'll have done something Canelo couldn't idea that sounds powerful on paper but collapses under scrutiny. The Chavez Jr. that Canelo fought was in better shape, more disciplined, and far more dangerous. The current Chavez Jr. is, by all accounts, a shadow of that version. Comparing outcomes between the two is a promotional sleight of hand intended to trick fans into thinking Jake's one would carry historical weight. But analysts like Rogan and Malignaggi see through it, recognizing it as narrative bait for casual fans, not a true measure of greatness.
I thought, you know what, if this guy's really good, and this is way before he fought Tyson, if Jake really is going to want to fight somebody and going to fight a boxer, Junior's the guy. Jake can have a claim should he stop Junior others that haven't.
Canelo
he
never
has a
did.
claim. Exactly. So now he could say, hey, I did what Canelo didn't. Now it's not that easy though, because he's fighting a guy who's young in his, I'm not gonna say his prime, but he's a younger fighter than was.
Finally, Diaz acknowledges that Jake Paul might be the physically bigger man in the ring, but also makes it clear Chavez Jr. is the real boxer, the man with years of experience, muscle memory, and instincts honed in countless fights. Yet, even with that advantage, there's real doubt about whether he can beat someone who's only been boxing for a few years. And that's the core of the controversy. If the bar is now so low that someone with Chavez Jr.'s resume is being sold as a test for Jake Paul, it speaks volumes about the state of boxing today. For Joe Rogan and traditionalists, that's not evolution, it's erosion.
See, he's gonna be the bigger guy from 2 years ago, but who's gonna be the boxer in this fight? You know, it's naturally Junior's the fighter from that has been doing it for years, not just 2 or 3 years ago.
The Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fight is more than a gimmick, it's a mirror reflecting the fractured state of boxing today. What should have been a test of merit has become a litmus test for how far the sport will bend for clicks, cash, and clout. From Tim Bradley's disbelief to Paulie Malignaggi's brutal honesty and Robert Diaz's surreal recollections, the verdict is loud and clear. Boxing's purists are fed up. Even if Jake Paul wins, many will see it not as validation, but as proof that spectacle has overtaken sport. And that's where Joe Rogan's criticism cuts deepest. He sees what this really is, a fight built on manufactured legitimacy, marketed chaos, and commercial illusion. The question isn't whether Jake can beat Chavez Jr. The real question is, should this even be happening in a sport that once stood for greatness? When the biggest talking point is what this says about boxing itself, you know something's off. If you're tired of the hype and hungry for the truth behind the headlines, then slam that subscribe button right now and join the squad here on Box Up, the channel that calls BS when everyone else stays silent. Like this video, drop your take in the comments, and tell us, is Jake Paul smart for picking Chavez Jr.? Or is this the final straw for boxing's credibility? Are fights like this helping the sport or humiliating it? We break it down, we call it out, and we say what others won't. This is Box-A-Hub. This is real fight talk. This is where the gloves come off. Stay tuned, stay sharp, and keep your guard up.